Good morning, everyone. Is this on? It is. So we begin, as we like to do, acknowledging that we're gathered on land that is the traditional and unceded land of the Coast Salish people. And we remember this morning our neighbors, the Cowichan and the Malahat peoples, and think about, as we go on, how we can work to continue to reconcile and make up for some of the injustices that have been done in the past. So today, we're kind of transforming the chapel into a synagogue a little bit, trying to get some Hanukkah vibe going today. So today is the 7th day, I think, of Hanukkah. And I'm very happy because I think this is the first time that we've done any kind of made any serious effort at celebrating this beautiful festival of light. And if you don't know what Hanukkah is, you're going to learn about it. And we're going to celebrate this beautiful tradition that's kind of so much a part of the Jewish tradition this morning. And we're going to start by singing hymn number 68, which is O Come, Emmanuel, and Mrs. Daniel's going to play this melody on the cello a couple times through. So if you don't know it, you'll get it. It's a very easy melody. Once she finishes the cello solo, I will invite you to stand and sing. And you'll see this is all imagery from the Hebrew Scriptures. It's a song about the yearning for the Messiah to come. So I hope you enjoy this morning. Number 68, please stand. Thank you all. That was really great. Please be seated. I'm going to invite Isaac to come forward and tell us a bit about the Hanukkah story.
Hi, I'm Isaac, in case you didn't know. So the story of Hanukkah starts in 168 BCE, where the Greeks took over Jerusalem and they outlawed Judaism, and they desecrated all these Jewish temples. And this group called the Maccabees, this small Jewish army, revolted and took control of one of the temples, and they tried to restore it. But the problem was that they only had enough oil to light the temple for one night. And so they sent out messengers trying to find more oil so that they could continue restoring it, because they couldn't really restore it in the dark. But the miracle is that even though it took 8 days to find more oil, the light that was supposed to last one night lasted all 8 days. And so we celebrate the 8 days of light, the miracle of the oil. And yeah, that's Hanukkah. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaac. So, as Isaac said, the miracle was that for 8 days and nights, the oil kept burning, the oil lamp, even though there really wasn't enough there. So the menorah, of course, has 8 candles on it. So hence the symbolism. So I'm going to invite Ms. Solberg and her assistants to come up, and we're going to, I think you all have the prayer for the lighting of the menorah. And yeah.
So we're going to hold on the prayer, but keep it with you. I'm just going to give you a little bit of my background. So there's this wonderful picture book called Ish by author Peter H. Reynolds, which if you haven't read, you ought to. In my opinion, it illustrates a beautiful transformation of a young boy's relationship with his art and his outlook on life. In the story, the main character's older brother criticizes his artwork and tells the young boy that it doesn't look how it's supposed to. It doesn't reflect reality. And like any young kid, he feels completely discouraged and throws his work out. Thankfully, and to his surprise, he discovers that his younger sister has fished out his discarded pictures and has put them up on her wall to display. He questions her actions and tells her they don't look like they're supposed to, so why would you feel the need to exhibit them? She tells him that she likes them. And while they may not look exactly like reality, they look real-ish. For me, this is the perfect sentiment to describe my relationship with Judaism. I don't fully identify as a Jew, but I'm rather Jew-ish. And whilst I realize that the term Jewish refers to people who practice Judaism in a more conventional way, I have interpreted it a little differently as a result of this book. I grew up with a father that comes from a Jewish background and a mother who grew up going to the United Church. We regularly spent holidays back in Ontario celebrating with our extended sides of the family, coupling Easter and Passover, or Hanukkah and Christmas. My sisters and I all have middle names from the Bible, in addition to being given Hebrew ones to honor relatives that came before us. Unlike many of our Christian relatives, we didn't go to church on Sundays. Those were reserved for competitive gymnastics meets and soccer games. We ate meals as a family and were very vocal with our gratitude, but never said grace prior to eating. We also gulped down glasses of milk with our spaghetti and occasionally indulged in bacon, both major faux pas of Orthodox Judaism. At first, and as you can expect, I wasn't all that sure what to make of my relationship with faith or which religion I was supposed to subscribe to. Winters were especially interesting for me and my sisters. We would light the menorah and sing, eat latkes, and delight at the Hanukkah gelt on the table. We would also hang our stockings above the fireplace, drive around to look at all the Christmas lights, belt out descants to "O Come All Ye Faithful" with my mom at church on Christmas Eve, and open presents on the 25th of December. We never had a Christmas tree, despite many attempts to convince my father that we could make a fabulous Hanukkah version, complete with the Star of David at the top. He did, however, allow us to get Christmas lights so long as they were both blue and green. In my community at home in Vancouver, we were the only family that I knew of that celebrated the Festival of Lights. My mother, the most Jewish non-Jew you've ever met, offered to come to my elementary school class to tell the story of Hanukkah, And this is where the real magic happened. As I watched my classmates eagerly raise their hands to be picked to light the candles or enthusiastically gobble down latkes, I felt a new sense of pride within. Afterwards, my friends would tell me how lucky I was that I got to celebrate both Christmas and Hanukkah. Each year, my mother would come to a new class, and each year I would marvel at how keen my peers were to engage. Soon, we had other parents come to tell us about all the different holidays and traditions that they observed based on their origins. For me, the opportunity to carry forward traditions from my family is an honor. I get to celebrate Christmas and Hanukkah. My reality is that to be Jewish is in fact awesome. Here at Shawnigan, we're exposed to so many different cultures, and we get to learn from one another about the many days and events that are important to us individually and collectively. I suppose my message is that no matter what it is you subscribe to, I hope you have or find your own ish and honor it. I would like to conclude this with 8 fun-ish facts to connect you to Hanukkah Judaism. As Shawnigan folk, many of us tend to associate with Hogwarts. The film version of Harry Potter, aka Daniel Radcliffe, is Jewish. The famous dreidel, or a 4-sided spinning top, is thought to have been invented as a distraction. The Greek Syrians had outlawed Jewish studies, so the Jews spun dreidels to pretend they were merely playing games while they engaged with their scripture. While presents are now associated with the holiday, they are not traditionally, and according to my father, must be small and practical things like socks or Scotch tape. Seriously. Because the Hebrew calendar is lunisolar, Hanukkah is not on the same date every year. The celebration always begins on the 25th of Kislev, meaning it typically falls in November or December of the Gregorian calendar. There is no wrong way to spell Hanukkah. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, there's 24 different spellings. So go for it. Most of the food served at Hanukkah is fried. This isn't a coincidence. People fry their food in oil for Hanukkah as a symbol of the miracle oil that burned for 8 nights. Hanukkah is not the most important Jewish holiday. Jewish holidays like Yom Kippur, Passover, and Rosh Hashanah are much more significant to the religion. And menorah is the Hebrew word for lamp. The shamash, meaning the helper or attendant, is the central candle. It's lit first and then is used to light the other candles. I now invite Ophi and Stephanie to come help lead us in the prayer.
Hello everyone. We're gonna teach you guys this prayer in Hebrew, so if you could all please take your fingers. We're gonna read the first line first, and if you could all repeat after us, please. So, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam.
Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam.
Asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav.
Asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav.
V'tzivanu le'yadi
Shel Hanukkah.
V'tzivanu lahanlik ner shel Hanukkah. We would like to invite some special people to come help us light. So Jonah, if you're around, that would be great. Isaac and Isaac's brother. And if there's anyone that's particularly feeling Jewish today, come up.
Before we light the candles, we wanted to say the whole prayer together. So, wait, let me just say the prayer first. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav
V'tzivanu lahanlik ner shel Hanukkah.
Well done. Thank you. Who enjoyed being read to as a child? Your mother or father would read you to sleep? I hope all of you. Who misses that? So, good news is we're going to be read to this morning a children's book called Herschel and the Hanukkah Goblins. So I'll invite Ophi to come forward and read to us.
Okay, so this is Herschel and the Hanukkah Goblins by Eric Kimmel. It was the first night of Hanukkah. Herschel of Ostropol was walking down the road. Soon he would reach the next village, where bright candles, merry songs, and platters piled high with tasty potato latkes awaited him. But when he arrived, the village was silent and dark. Not a single Hanukkah candle could be seen. "Isn't tonight the first night of Hanukkah?" Herschel asked the villagers. "We don't have Hanukkah, Herschel," one of them answered sadly. "No Hanukkah? How can that be?" "It's because of the goblins. They haunt the old synagogue at the top of the hill. They hate Hanukkah. Whenever we try to light a menorah, the goblins blow out the candles. They break our dreidels. They throw our potato latkes on the floor. Those wicked goblins make our lives miserable all year long. But on Hanukkah, it's really bad." "I'm not afraid of goblins," he said. "Tell me how to get rid of them." "It's not as easy as you think," the rabbi warned. "You must spend 8 nights in the old synagogue. The Hanukkah candles must be lit each night. On the 8th night, the king of the goblins must light them himself. That is the only way to break their power." "I'm not afraid, Rabbi," Herschel said. "If I can't outwit a few goblins, then my name isn't Herschel of Ostropol." The villagers wished Herschel good luck. They had no potato latkes to give him, so they packed several hard-boiled eggs for him to eat, along with a big jar of pickles. The rabbi gave Herschel a brass menorah, a package of candles, and a box of matches. Nobody expected to see Herschel again. It was long past sundown by the time Herschel climbed to the top of the hill where the old synagogue stood. The crumbling building was gloomy and dark, and rusty hinges squealed as Herschel opened the door. He put 2 candles in the menorah and set it on the windowsill. He struck a match and lit the shamus candle. He said the blessings and was about to light the other candle when he heard a voice. "Hey, what are you doing?" Herschel turned around. Here was a goblin no bigger than a horsefly, with a long pointy tail and 2 little bat wings hovering in the air. "I'm lighting Hanukkah candles," Herschel said. "Tonight is the first night of Hanukkah." "Oh, no, it's not. We don't allow Hanukkah, not around here." "Is that so?" said Herschel. "Who's going to stop me, a little pipsqueak like you?" "I may be little, but I'm strong," said the goblin. "Really? Can you crush rocks in your hand?" asked Herschel. The goblin laughed. "Crush rocks? You're joking. Nobody's that strong." "I am. Watch." Herschel took a hard-boiled egg from his pocket and squeezed it until the yolk and the white ran through his fingers. "That's how hard I'm going to squeeze you if you try to stop me from lighting these candles." The little goblin's eyes opened wide, since in the dim light the egg looked exactly like a rock. The little goblin shook with fear. "You leave me alone," he said. "Gladly," said Herschel, "if you let me light my candles in peace." "All right," said the goblin. "One night won't make a difference. But you better not be here tomorrow. Big, scary goblins are coming, much bigger than I. If they catch you lighting Hanukkah candles, you'll be sorry." "We'll see about that," Herschel said to himself, and he lit the first candle. On the second night of Hanukkah, another goblin appeared. This one was big and fat and waddled like a goose. Herschel was finishing his dinner of pickles and hard-boiled eggs. "Have some pickles," he said to the goblin. "Pickles?" "Here, catch." Herschel tossed him a sour pickle. The goblin caught it in his mouth and swallowed it. Pickles are good. Do you like them? I have plenty in this jar. Take all you want." The greedy goblin grabbed as many pickles as his claws could hold, but when he tried to pull his fist out of the jar, he couldn't. "I'm stuck," the goblin shouted. "You put a spell in this jar to hold me fast." "That's right," Herschel said, laughing, "and it's a very powerful spell. You came here tonight to stop me from lighting Hanukkah candles, so now I'm going to light them while you watch with your hand stuck in that jar. How do you like that?" "No, no," the goblin screamed. "I hate Hanukkah." "Too bad. You'll have to get used to it," Herschel said the blessings and lit the candle slowly. Then he sang all his favorite Hanukkah songs. The goblin wailed and carried on so much that Herschel finally decided to let him go. "Shall I tell you how to break the spell?" Yes, I can't stand it anymore." Let go of the pickles. Your greed is the only spell holding you prisoner." The goblin let go of the pickles. His hand slipped out of the jar easily. How that goblin raged. He had stood with it in his hand in a pickle jar while Herschel lit the Hanukkah candles under his nose. The furious goblin stamped his foot so that when he shattered into a million pieces, the wind blew them away. The third night of Hanukkah came. Herschel felt something watching him as he set the candles in the menorah. Instead of lighting them, he began playing with the dreidel. Herschel looked up. Sitting across the table was another goblin. This one had a fiery red face and 2 enormous horns. It's getting late, the goblin said. When are you going to light the candles? Later. There's plenty of time. Herschel spun his dreidel. This is more fun. What are you playing with? The goblin asked. It looks like a top. It's a dreidel. Don't you know about dreidels? No. Too bad. Dreidels are lots of fun. You can also make lots of money if you know how to play. Really? The goblin was interested now. All goblins like money. This one was no exception. How do you play? It's very simple, Herschel said. But you must have gold. That's the first rule. I've plenty. Is this enough? The goblin poured a pile of gold coins onto the table. That's fine, Herschel said. Listen carefully now. This letter is Shin. If it comes up, you have to give me a handful of gold. This letter is Hey. If it comes up, you give me half of your gold. And this letter is Gimel. If the dreidel falls on this letter, you give me all your gold. Understand? Wait, there's one letter left. What about this one? That's Nun. If the dreidel falls on Nun, I don't give you anything. Ready? Let's play. You go first. The goblin spun the dreidel. The little top whirled round and round. When it fell, the letter on top was Shin. Too bad, Herschel said, taking a big handful of the goblin's gold. Try again. Maybe you'll have better luck. The goblin spun the dreidel once more. This time it fell on Hay. This isn't your night, Herschel said, helping himself to half the goblin's gold. One more time. Your luck is bound to improve. Once again, the goblin spun. This time the dreidel landed on Gimel. Too bad, Herschel said, as he sighed as he took the rest of the goblin's gold. Would you like me to spin? Yes, the goblin grumbled. He was very unhappy about losing his money. Herschel spun the dreidel. This time the letter Nun was on top. Oh my, I don't give you anything. I get to keep all the gold. Say that was fun. Get some more gold and we'll play again. What about the Hanukkah candles? We'll light them later. There's plenty of time. Not for me, the goblin said. I'm leaving now. I don't like this game. I don't like Hanukkah, and I don't like you. Don't go, Herschel pleaded. I know lots of games. Stay a while. We'll have fun. Goodbye. The goblin spread his wings, swooped out the door, and flew off into the night. Herschel lit the candles all by himself. On the following nights, other goblins came. One had 6 heads, one had 3 eyes. All were terrible and fierce. They growled and roared, and they changed themselves into horrible shapes. They tried to stop Herschel from lighting the Hanukkah candles, but Herschel fooled them all. Finally, the 7th night arrived. 8 tiny candles flickered on the windowsill. Herschel sat back to enjoy their light. Where did the goblins go? Had they finally given up? Herschel felt sleepy. His eyes closed. Suddenly he sat up. He heard a horrible sound, a voice that sounded like the cracking of bones. Happy Hanukkah, Herschel of Ostropol. Who is it? Who's there? Don't you know who I am, Herschel? Weren't you expecting the king of the goblins? The voice rose to a hurricane roar. It ripped the shingles from the synagogue roof and shattered the windows. The Hanukkah candles reeled in the savage blast, but they didn't go out. You're too early, Herschel shrieked. You're not supposed to come till tomorrow. The great wind died down. Don't worry, Herschel. I am far away, but I have the power to see you and speak to you. Enjoy this Hanukkah evening, my friend. It will be your last. Tomorrow night I will come for you. You fooled my slaves, the other goblins. Let's see if you can fool me. Poor Herschel. What was he to do? The king of goblins was on his way, and no power on earth could stop him. Unless Herschel had an idea. It was a big chance, but he had to take it. It was the only way to save himself and Hanukkah. It was the last night of Hanukkah. Herschel set the candles in the menorah, but instead of placing it on the windowsill, he put the menorah and the box of matches on a small table near the door. Then he sat down to wait. Night fell. It grew dark as pitch inside the gloomy old synagogue. Outside, the whole world lay cold and silent. Suddenly, a great gust ripped the synagogue door from its hinges. The whole building shook. A fearsome voice spoke. Herschel of Ostropol. Did I hear something? It is I, the king of the goblins. Herschel laughed. Don't be silly. You're one of the boys from the village. You're trying to scare me. I am not a boy. I am the king of the goblins. I'll believe it when I see it. Show yourself to me. Behold, I stand before you. Do you believe me now? Herschel tried to look. Even in the darkness, he could see the outline of a monstrous shape filling the doorway, a figure too horrible to describe. He pretended not to care. It's too dark. I can't see anything. A candlestick and some matches are by the doorway. Why don't you light a few candles? Then I'll see what you really are. Indeed you shall. A match flared, the shaman's candle caught the flame. Herschel's blood turned to water at the awful sight before him, but he did not lose courage. Master of the world, he silently prayed, thou who create the heavens and the earth and the spirits in the air, stand by me now. Then he addressed the goblin. It's still too dark. What are you afraid of? There are plenty of candles. Why not light them all? A hideous hand took the shaman's candle and lit the other ones one by one. Herschel felt himself growing faint, but he forced himself to look. His eyes grew wider and wider as each candle caught the flame. 6, 7, 8. The king of the goblins now stood before him. Now, Herschel, do you know who I am? I know you're not Queen Esther. Very funny. Enjoy the joke. It will be your last. That's what you think. Begone or I'll take a stick to you. How dare you speak to the king of goblins that way? I'll speak to you any way I please. You have no power. Your spell is broken. See? The menorah is lit. You thought those ordinary candles you were lighting? They weren't. They were Hanukkah candles, and you lit them yourself. The king of goblins roared with fury. The earth trembled, and a mighty wind arose. It ripped off the synagogue roof and blew down the walls. It splintered the great timbers and scattered them like matchsticks. Around the menorah, the whirlwind howled, but the candles never flickered. They burned with clear, steady flames. The king of the goblins had no power over them. The spirit of Hanukkah had triumphed. The great wind vanished as suddenly as it had risen. Herschel rubbed his eyes. The night wasn't as still as before, even though the synagogue was gone. Walls, floor, roof, even the foundation stones had vanished, but the menorah remained, standing tall upon the little table where Herschel had placed it. Herschel waited until the last candle burned out, then he started down the road that led to the village. I'd better hurry, he thought. I don't want to miss the last night of Hanukkah. But there was no reason to worry. In every window there stood a menorah with 9 gleaming candles to light the way. The whole village was waiting for him. The end.
Thank you, Ophie. Very well done. Thank you. So I'm going to invite Isaac to come back up and lead us in some prayers.
All right. I'm going to say the Shema in Hebrew. I'm not the best singer, so bear with me, okay? Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kevod Malhuto, Leolam Vaed. Thank you.
Thank you all. That went as well as I would have expected. Thank you. You were all wonderful today. Just a few words. I just wanted to reiterate what Mrs. Solzberg said about finding your ish. And, believe it or not, I can kind of relate to that. There are things in my tradition, in the Christian tradition, that make a lot of sense to me and move me and inspire me, and there's some things that just don't. And so I kind of think of myself sometimes as a bit Christian-ish, to be honest. And I think that ishness is what allows us, gives us that little bit, if we hold our beliefs a little bit lightly, when we don't think that what we believe is the objective, absolute, undeniable truth that nobody else has. When we're able to hold things a bit more lightly than that, we can share with one another our beliefs. We can share with one another our traditions. We can share with one another who we are, without being afraid of being shut down or try to convince that we're wrong. So I just love that. Again, Mrs. Solzberg, thank you so much for that idea of the ishness of our faith. One quick thing about Hanukkah, and one of the beautiful things about all these traditions is that the underlying messages, of course, they're universal, and we'll talk about that a bit with Christmas. These are universal messages, and this message of Hanukkah that, it's sometimes we don't think we have enough. There wasn't enough oil to purify the temple over the 8 days. Sometimes we don't think there's enough, but when we reach into ourselves for the right things, when we reach into ourselves for compassion and kindness and hope and joy, there is always enough. And sometimes when there's not enough, that we don't feel there's enough, we can sometimes turn to the person next to us, our friends, our our classmates and get a little bit of energy from them. So this is really, I think, underlying message of Hanukkah. There's always enough. And the enough comes from a belief that there is enough. You know, we can think that, well, we can have a scarcity mentality, as they say, and think, well, there's just not enough for me, there's not enough in the world for all of us. Or we can have the opposite view, that there's more than enough, that the world is bountiful, that our lives are bountiful. And there's always enough if we have the right approach to life. And so that, I think, is really, for me, what Hanukkah is about. So thank you again. I'm so pleased to have been able to get a little bit of Hanukkah vibe, as I say, this morning. So we'll end with a hymn that some of you know. I don't know if we've sung this again. It's one of the community's favorites. It's hymn number 12. And I'll ask Mrs. Daniel to play the whole first verse all the way through so you can hear it. Again, it is, these are images, all images from the Hebrew scriptures. So if you could quietly open your hymn books to hymn number 12, stay seated while you just listen, and then I'll invite you to stand and sing. Thank you.
Thank you. Please be seated.